day in the neighborhood.
Hey guys, morning. It's Mr. Darren here. Hope you guys are doing well. And as we continue through these crazy times, wanted to do a quick prayer for all of you and for our time together today. So before we begin our lesson, let's all bow our heads and do a quick prayer, and then we'll dive into the lesson for today. So God, I thank you for this time that we have together. I pray that as we learn from your word and from Esther today, that you would be showing us what you intend for us to learn, God, and that we would be able to slow down and understand your word and hopefully have a little fun today. And God, I pray for all of those being affected right now by COVID-19. God, I pray for a quick and speedy vaccine, God, and that you would release us from this pandemic. God, I pray that during this time we continue to grow closer to you, and that while we may feel a little bit distant, that we would continue to dive into your word as we're about to today and learn from you. Lord, I pray for all the students today, and I pray for their families, God, and that they would be having great summers and being able to enjoy outside, and that we would be able to learn from you through all that we do. God, I thank you for all that you are and all that you've done for us in our lives, and I can't wait to meet again. In your name alone, amen. So, everyone, welcome to Sunday School. Today, we're going to continue on in our Esther teaching. And so, does anybody remember which book of the Bible Esther is in? That's right, Old Testament. And so, Esther was the queen who was married to King Xerxes. So, what we're going to have today is we're going to have a little prop here. So, we've got the fork, which represents King Xerxes. We've got the spoon, which represents Queen Esther, right? That's a member of our story. And then, as we're going to go through this, we're going to also learn about Haman, who is one of the king's advisors. He's a bad guy. That's why he's the knife. And then we've got Mordecai, who represents the wooden spoon, and he is Queen Esther's cousin, right? So we've got four main characters. We've got the king, who makes a lot of the decisions. We've got the Queen Esther, who has a really important role in this story. We've got her cousin Mordecai, and then we've got the king's advisor Haman, who's actually a really bad guy. So, as we are going through the lesson today, I want you to just keep a little thought in your mind as to understanding what is going through Esther's mind. You know, when is she scared? When does she become brave? Who encourages her? As well as, you know, how does she eventually rely on God through these crazy circumstances? So, let's do King Xerxes here. He was the king, and what he was doing was he had some advisors, and he had a really trusted advisor named Haman. And so he promoted Haman over all of these other advisors. And so Haman was pretty much right next to the king in terms of stature and notability and all kinds of stuff. So when you think about Haman, I want you guys to think of a really, really bad guy. And somehow he got King Xerxes to promote him and promote him and promote him. And so what happens when somebody like Haman got a ton of power in the Old Kingdom? He became very prideful, and he became very wielding of his power. And so one of the I would say perks of when Haman had all of this power was that when he walked by, everybody had to bow down to him. Now, have you guys ever seen that crazy, like when maybe the president is walking by or somebody very important? Could you imagine bowing down on your knee and taking a curtsy like this every time? It's like if the Queen of England was to come, the appropriate customary thing to do is to bow in reverence. And so what that means is to show respect, right? And so Haman was actually a really bad guy, and he probably didn't deserve the respect that was entitled to him based on his title. And so when he was walking along one day, he was walking up to the gates of the kingdom, of the castle, right? So he was walking up, and all of a sudden there was this guy Mordecai standing there. And Mordecai was like, this guy is a bad guy, and I'm not going to bow down to him. So he walks by, and he's like, Mordecai, why aren't you bowing down? And Mordecai was like, you're not a good guy. I'm not bowing down to you. So this made Haman very, very, very angry. So he walked into the kingdom and he said, that Mordecai, he is a troublemaker and he's a rebel rouser and he just creates a lot of problems. And in fact, you know what? It's not just Mordecai, it's his entire family, the Jewish heritage. So Mordecai, being the bad guy that he was, developed a plan, little sinister plan. And so his plan was to convince King Xerxes that all the Jews in the kingdom needed to die because they were going to do riots and they were going to really cause a lot of problems for the kingdom, which was completely untrue. It was mainly Haman feeling bad and being hurt because somebody didn't bow down to him, right? And so Mordecai became a little nervous, right? Because he was going to be killed, and he found out because what Mordecai had done is he went and talked to the king, and he said, King Xerxes, we've got these Jews, and they're going to make a lot of trouble, and so what we need to do is we need to kill them all. So give me your ring, and I will take that, and I will send all these letters throughout the entire kingdom, and on the 12th month, on a certain day, I will have all the soldiers kill the Jews because they were terrible. That sounds awful, doesn't it? Complete extermination of an entire set of people is just crazy to think about. And so, as Mordecai was hearing about this, he got really, really nervous. And so he knew his cousin was Queen Esther, who was actually married to King Xerxes, and Esther was also a Jew. And so Mordecai got to Queen Esther and said, hey, Queen Esther, we have this problem that's going to be happening. And because of this, all of the Jews are going to die. And Esther was a little bit hesitant to help. But then Mordecai also said, Esther, remember that you're a Jew too, and that you will eventually be killed. And so what Esther done is she began to pray. And she said, God, please guide me. Because Esther was very, very scared. And why she was scared was because anybody who, in those times, anybody who approached the king without an invitation from the king would be killed immediately in the throne room, right? So if Esther went into the throne room and barged in unannounced, sometimes when you walk into your mom and dad's room or your mom and dad's walk into your room unannounced, right? In the old kingdom, if you did that to the king, you would be dead unless he extended his golden scepter to save you, saying, nope, they're okay. We don't have to worry about them. And so Esther was very, very scared about this. Even though she was his wife, she was fearful for her life. And so she prayed and prayed to God. And eventually she had the courage and she developed a plan to convince King Xerxes what the best way to save the Jewish people were. And so she went into the circle unannounced with whole faith in God that if she died, she would die for God's purpose, or if she lived, then she would be able to save the Jewish people. And so she went into the inner circle where King Xerxes was conducting his kingdom business, and miraculously, he extended his golden scepter, which saved Esther. And so rather than asking for all the support or asking to save the Jews right there, she asked him to come to a party, which is awesome. Have you guys ever gone to a really, really fun party? So what they were doing was Esther decided to throw a party. So imagine like this is a disco. And so she was having a great time going to have a lot of food, a lot of drink. And so she was very, very smart in that she invited not only King Xerxes, but also his advisor, Haman. And so Haman felt very, very proud because he was one of a very select few people, the king and queen, invited to this party. So that elevated his status even more, which, created more prideful things. And so as they were going on, King Xerxes said to Esther, with Haman by his side, Queen Esther, I know that you asked for me for something in the throne room. What is it that you wanted? Ask of it, and it will be given to you, up to half of the kingdom. And could you imagine half of the kingdom? That's a huge gift, right? And so Esther, being smart, said, my king, I will ask you again, but let's have another party, right? So they're having a great time, whatever. And then so Haman went home and told his wife about like the really fun party that he had. So he was like, "Oh, look at me! I got invited to a really cool party with Queen Esther and the king, and I'm really elevated in my status." And so his wife said, "Great job! Don't forget about killing the Jews." And so the next day they went to another party, and so Haman was going to go and convince the king again to say, "Hey, we signed up for this, and we need to kill all these Jews so that they don't cause any more problems." And specifically wanting to kill Mordecai. And the reason he wanted to kill Mordecai was because he continued to show him disrespect by not bowing down to him. And so what Haman had done was he set up a really big tall stake in the ground and said, "We're going to hang Mordecai from that stake in the ground and kill him." And so at this next party, he was going to bring that up and say, "This person who was really, really bad to you, let's kill them because they showed great disrespect." And so they were at the party the next day. Everybody's having a great time. Haman walks in and he says to King Xerxes, he says, "My king, what would you do to somebody who disrespects you?" And King Xerxes said, "Oh, yeah, I would kill them, absolutely, whatever. But, Haman, I have a question for you. What does a person who shows loyalty to the king deserve?" So we'll stop there for a second. In the past history, Mordecai used to work in the castle. And so one of the things that he did was he found out that there were going to be two assassins in the throne room who were going to try and kill King Xerxes. And so Mordecai let the people know, or let the king know, about these two assassins who were going to kill him. And the king realized he never thanked Mordecai for that great service of saving his life. And so back to the party, right? So Haman goes on to say, "Well, you should dress him in your best robes and your absolutely lovely colors and give him the title that he deserves, etc., etc." Not knowing that the king is talking about Mordecai. And so the king says, "Oh, great idea, Haman. Why don't you go and do this to Mordecai?" And Haman felt significantly embarrassed, right? He was like, "Oh my gosh, I was going to tell the king to kill this guy because he showed me disrespect, but now the king wants to save him, and not only save him, but elevate him in position in Mordecai." So then at this time, Esther also decided to ask the king, my king, why can you please save my life?" And the king was like, "Absolutely, what is it that you need?" And she revealed the plot to say, "My king, you have signed into act a decree to kill all Jews on December, or the month 12, the 12th month, and I am one of those Jews." And the king was flabbergasted, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, we need to get rid of this." And he was so mad about how Haman had tricked him into killing the Jews and also killing Esther. And so he went out into the garden. And so, as you can imagine, Haman was very, very, very mad, and he was trying to attack Esther on the couch. And so when the king walked back in from being on the patio, he was like, "Haman, not only did you try and kill my wife, but you're trying to hurt her right now as well. I decree you to die." And so because of that, Haman, who was the really, really bad guy and who had a plan to kill all of the Jews, was killed. Also during this time, King Xerxes decided to reward Mordecai and saying, "Mordecai, you saved my life, and because of that, I'm elevating you to a very, very high position," which was Haman's old position. So Mordecai was able to, Esther was actually received the estate of Haman. So Esther got all of his land, all of his money, all of these things, and she made Mordecai the runner of her whole estate. And so after this time, Mordecai reissued new decrees saying that do not kill any Jews in December, month 12. And because of that, you do not, we need to allow the Jews to defend themselves. And so on that date that was originally decreed for all the Jews to die, they defended themselves against potential attackers and won. And so that's the story that we learned today in Esther's chapters 3 through 8. And so it's a very exciting story. There were a lot of things going on. But one thing I wanted you guys to as I said earlier, really connect with was how scared Esther was. Have you guys ever been like super scared about maybe taking out the trash in the dark outside at night? I know that was something that was always very scary for me. But understanding that God is always there, and that as Esther trusted in God, she would say, you know what, God, you are my king, and if I die today, I am going to be in your arms, and if I live, then I am able to save the Jewish people. And so while some of our circumstances may not be that extreme, we do ask God for forgiveness and for strength and for courage throughout our daily lives. So I wanted to thank you all for spending some time today to learn a little bit about Esther, and I hope you have a great time in your small groups later today, and hope you guys get to ask some really great questions. So thanks again, and we will see you very soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.